Hi. Hey, Richard. What are you doing up? Why didn't you come in?
Didn't realize anybody else was up. I've been thinking about your friend Alex.
Did you ever meet him?
No. Karen's told me some. I imagine him mostly. I can never make it through the night. Insomnia. Karen doesn't even know it.
Might have something that could help you sleep.
No, thanks. No. I don't really mind it so much. Sometimes when my family's asleep, I just sit downstairs alone and it's so quiet. I hate not being able to sleep, but I don't really mind the time alone. Sometimes I think the thing about kids is they're instant priorities. You know you have to protect them and provide for them, and sometimes it means your life isn't exactly the way you want it to be. There's some asshole at work you have to kowtow to, and sometimes you find yourself doing things you never really thought you'd ever do. But you try to minimize that stuff and be the best person you can be. But you set your priorities, and that's the way life is. I wonder if your friend Alex knew that. One thing's for sure, he couldn't live with it. I know I shouldn't talk, you guys know him. But the thing is, nobody said it was going to be fun. At least nobody said it to me.
A modern day remake of Matthew Vaughn's Layer Kick, a Coen Brothers end up with Timothy Chalamet. A Citizen Kane prequel, a Midnight Cowboy sequel, Alvin and the Chipmunks deserve another squeakquel. So many new ways to revisit sideways, but a graphic novel is how we choose to update. But we still hold fast, you can't change the past on the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, Sandlappers, and Gamecocks. This is Ruined Childhoods, and we are in the final 12 episodes of our 52-episode cinematic exploration of America.
Wow.
On this episode, we are in the Palmetto State, named for its state tree, the sable palm. This state is home to a coastal island inhabited entirely by rhesus monkeys. It is illegal to buy silverware on Sundays, and in addition to buying porn, cigarettes, and lottery tickets, 18-year-olds are now also allowed to legally play pinball. That's right, we're in South Carolina, talking about the 1983 dramedy The Big Chill. Dan, it's 1983. You're spending a weekend in a house with 5 1980s actors and actresses.
Oh, goodness.
Who's there?
If it's 1983, I'm like 6 years old. I don't know if I could handle that, but
Okay, present day you.
oh, okay. All right, cool. Am I riding my little like pedal Batmobile?
Present day you.
No,
Present day you.
Present day me. So, okay. So appropriately middle-aged me for this, for this topic. Okay.
You would be too old for the Big Chill group. So
Okay.
would I.
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, if you, anyway, we'll get back to that, but I would say that like our age now is kind of like our generation has taken the same amount of time to get to where that generation got earlier.
Sure.
I would say for many of us. Anyway, all right. So back to the question.
Your Big Chill more.
Okay.
Who's in your group in South Carolina?
Oh my Chillmore. All right. Nice. All right. So I'm sorry. Getting back to the question again. You said, who am I inviting?
Five 1980s actors and actresses.
So they have to have been, do they have to have been famous in like already in 1983, already established?
No, 1980s.
So it could be somebody who is on the rise in the 1980s. Okay. Good to know. Okay. So it's 1983 and I get 5 strictly 1980s. Like I can't invite Betty
Would you like
Davis.
to hear my 5 first?
Can I? I don't know if that's going to taint my. No, John. If you don't mind, since you posed the question, I'm going to answer it. If you could edit out any contemplation pauses that are too extensive. Because I'm not going to like go on the internet. And I feel like that's cheating. And now that we're on, like, we can be seen on YouTube and Spotify. So I don't want to be cheating. So like, this is my credibility here. is the host of a movie podcast. So 1980s actors who I would have. Okay. Do I get a Big Chill cast member?
Sure.
Goldblum.
Okay.
I mean, like any decade.
You two are birthday twins, so you could have that to talk about.
We are birthday twins. I once collected action figures that were Jeff Goldblum based action figures because I thought it was wonderful that there were multiple like action franchises that starred
None for
Jeff
the
Goldblum.
Big Chill. None for the Big Chill, surprisingly.
There's like, come on. There's
In
one for the
action
Fly. Figures. Even though it's not, it's entirely Brundle Fly. Anyway, I digress. Goldblum would be there.
Goldblum.
Okay, so Goldblum would be there. Let me think. Quintessential 1980s. We're having dinner together. I assume there's going to be some libations. So we want to keep things fun. We want to keep things friendly. Who else? 1980s.
You're sitting around, you're smoking joints, you're having coffee, you're playing touch football.
Okay. All right. So then I would, all right. Okay. So 1980, you know who, all right. Because of course I went to like 1983 movies. I bet you Dan Aykroyd would be a lot of fun because I've heard that he is just like, he knows a lot about a crazy topic. I mean, we know this. He would also bring his vodka.
Theorist. Well, you know, into the paranormal.
Wait, is it 1983 Aykroyd? Has he made the vodka yet? Okay.
This is 80s Aykroyd. He has not made the vodka yet, but maybe you could suggest to him that he does such a thing and cut you in on it.
I don't know. All right. 88, no. But 80, I bet you 83 Aykroyd still would have been really fun to have around at a dinner party. So
he'd have a lot of energy.
Okay.
Where that energy source comes from.
But I feel like he's the type of person who like you could kind of finish your meal while he's talking.
Yeah.
You kind of need someone, you need someone like that. Okay. I don't want this to become a sausage party here. So Bette Midler. Bette Midler.
That's an interesting
Midler
one.
Would be a blast at a dinner party, I bet.
Goldblum, Aykroyd, Midler. All right.
Man, this is amazing. Oh boy. I love Eddie Murphy, but I wonder if he would just be too much on his own like ego trip to be fun at the party. Also, like there's the Trading Places. Can you really have more than one Trading Places cast member? In that case, do I invite Jamie Lee Curtis as well? Because Jamie Lee Curtis is awesome. Oh geez. All right. I have two more, right?
Yeah.
And I just need to get to it.
Or Dan, is it not a two more? Or are you going to invite Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I don't know about 1983 Arnold.
80s. You could pick any year in the 80s.
Oh, do I want to invite Arnold? Arnold would
be Predator Arnold.
How many more am I in my last one? I've lost track.
Well, only if you're going to be accepting Arnold as one of your five.
Okay. So if I accept Arnold,
Goldblum, Aykroyd, Midler. Let's see. Who else maybe would you like to see interact with that group?
Goldblum
and Dan and you
and me.
You're part of it.
Oh,
you're there.
I'm rolling the dice here, but Walken.
Interesting. Okay.
Walken. Yeah. I don't know if like as of 1983 he started to be like just the like, you know, saying weird and random stuff because he can, Christopher Walken, but
he's just complicit in the murder of Natalie Wood, Christopher Walken.
That's the thing is also I feel like Bette Midler would find a way to bring that up.
Just make sure there's not a lake over where you're staying.
I feel like Bette Midler would at some point be like, Chris, it's time it's time we address the elephant in the room. Yeah. Did you or didn't you?
That's why Midler's there is to
that is why Midler is there. And oh shoot. I'm thinking of so many. There's so many other people who I'm thinking would be fun to have there. And it would
Dan,
be
just so you know, we have zero crossover so far.
We have zero crossover so far.
Yeah, but a lot of similar people.
Okay, you know what? So I went Goldblum, Midler, Aykroyd, Walken. And then we're debating. I don't know that Schwarzenegger fits into this per se. I think that's a whole separate dinner party.
It's a different vibe. Yeah.
Oh man. I'm like, who do we have people? I feel like Walken and Goldblum would vibe well.
Just in height alone.
I mean, yeah, I wasn't even thinking that.
Yeah, they're breathing different air than you're breathing.
You know what? I'm trying to think of keeping it fun, but also keeping it interesting. I am between two very funny people as my last, but also like very intelligent and clever. And I'm like, who's going to have the stories? And Whoopi Goldberg.
Ooh, Whoopi Goldberg is a really good one.
I'm going, and you know why? Because I was also thinking of. Do you want to hear some other people that crossed my mind?
Sure.
And Schwarzenegger had crossed my mind. Because of course, as like you asked me, and instantly it's like my mind is just kind of like it's the beautiful mind window, but it's just actor names
right
up there. So I'm like, whose names and faces and like what movie posters passed through my mind. I thought about Schwarzenegger because I do enjoy hearing him in conversation. I do, appreciate a lot of what he has to say, even the stuff I don't always agree with. I thought about Steve Martin.
Oh, Steve Martin would be a really good one.
Steve Martin would, but like I read Born Standing Up.
Yeah.
So, and I know a good amount about Steve Martin, and I feel like Steve Martin would be really good to have something witty to say in response to something, or make like an insightful observation. But I feel like Goldblum kind of ticks that box, and like Goldblum is number one on the invite list.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
I mean, not to mention I have questions about some of the movies he had made before 1983, including one that we will be talking about on a coming episode.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and of course, Jamie Lee Curtis, another really interesting actress to have there would be Mia Farrow.
Ooh, that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, like she would be really cool to talk to.
Although at this time, she's probably with Woody Allen
in 83?
I don't know the timeline.
I don't think, I feel like Purple Rose of Cairo in 84 was
okay. But if we're just talking about generally the 80s, there's a danger that she'd be like, we should invite my friend Woody over.
Well, no. Well, also, yeah, no. No, if I'm inviting a couple, it's Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell.
Interesting.
Because as I was thinking, and I should have maybe I should have just been narrating my thought process, but I thought about Bette Midler, and then of course I thought about Goldie Hawn and Diane Keaton, and I was
get the First Wives Club there before they even know.
It's like, all due respect to Diane Keaton, but I think I'm like, Diane Keaton would be a lot of fun. But
also the danger of inviting Woody Allen over.
Facts. But also the potential of Warren Beatty. But
right. But then he's just going to sleep with Bette Midler, and it's going to make things awkward.
Yeah, no, well, I know. Well, that's why I'm not, like, Warren Beatty is a whole separate, like, I would love to have dinner with I would, especially 1983. Would love that, but that's a different crowd. So I thought about Goldie Hawn, and then of course was like, well, I think she's with Kurt Russell by this point. So does Kurt Russell come in? Like, do I invite Kurt Russell? Because Kurt Russell would be an awesome dinner guest.
Here's the way that I also think about it is, if you invite one person that's in a power couple, there's always the chance that the other one might pop in, you know?
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, and that doesn't. But I also felt it with Goldie and Kurt. I'm like, I feel like they're not a package deal. Like you can invite one and not the other, and they're going to be cool with it. And like Kurt won't be offended. And like when I invite Kurt to the next one, he'll come. So, but anyway, that was I definitely thought about. Was thinking about Goldie Hawn. I think I mentioned Eddie Murphy, Billy Crystal.
You get Billy Crystal, Whoopi Goldberg, Robin Williams. You've got yourself some comic relief going on.
Yep. I thought about Robin, though, and especially if we're talking 1983 Robin,
it's a bit much.
We're casting an ensemble here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thought about, and that's also where Eddie Murphy kind of was like, Eddie Murphy would be fun, but I don't know about necessarily about this entire crowd. And of course Jamie Lee Curtis would be a fantastic dinner guest to have. Now,
sure, I think that any era Jamie Lee Curtis would be a fantastic dinner guest.
Now let me tell you this much: the day that we talk about you're having a dinner party and you have to invite 3 power couples, Jamie Lee Curtis and Christopher Guest are first on the list.
So what I like about that is that they're both so different from one another. You're going to have a completely different experience. And then I bet that together you get a different dynamic that you're not expecting.
Absolutely.
Because they're notoriously, like they don't have a very large public presence together. But they've been together since probably 83.
Who knows? Because, they don't make that, that's not part of their public. They have very independent public personas.
Yeah. Totally.
But all right, John, I assume you have yours ready to go because
sure.
You asked the question.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going with just like it's the 80s. I'm not thinking specifically 1983. Michael Keaton.
Well, was also on my possible
on your maybe list.
Yes.
Sigourney Weaver.
Yes. Also
thumbs up. Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher would have the stories. She would also, that she would have so many amazing, clever things to say and get the party going.
Yeah, but what happens when you have to end the party early because she has to get her stomach pumped? Pour one out, all due respect.
I'm just going to move on from that one.
Oh.
John Candy. And in thinking about John Candy, I was thinking about like, who of that like SCTV group would I really want? And Rick Moranis was on there at first, but I feel like John Candy, especially if it's like me present day hanging out with this group, it's just like, look, the odds of me being able to hang out with Rick Moranis now, so extremely slim. John Candy, 0. So I'd want to opt for John Candy. I'm sure also, Also, it's like from everything I hear, he was just a really sweet person, really funny all the time, and just really nice. Well, very generous person.
And I would say, so you talk about that SCTV crew.
Yeah. And by the way, Dan, I do have one more, but go on.
But no, I thought about Martin. I was thinking about I thought about Martin Short for my list. And I just thought to myself, I was like, Martin Short is on all of the time. And that's too much. And Martin Short is a dinner party in and of himself.
And that's why I chose this group of people, because it's people who I feel like can turn it on when they want to or need to, but also can just kind of hang back and chill.
But also one last comment on SCTV crew, Catherine O'Hara.
Catherine O'Hara would be a blast. No doubt.
So
my final person, and Dan, you're going to lose your mind over this one. Prince.
Okay. All right.
Prince.
Sorry. You mentioned, John, you mentioned Prince, and now we both have seen the documentary about the We Are the World.
Yes.
And
I'm that's what got me thinking about it.
Well, it's like, so you wouldn't just invite Sheila E. and hope that she brings Prince?
I would have never used Sheila E. the way that Lionel Richie used her and Quincy Jones used her.
No, I feel that if there is a victim other than the victims of famine in Africa involved with We Are the World, it is Sheila E.
Prince, I thought, would be a really fun one because you always hear these stories about how interesting it is to hang out with Prince.
Yeah.
Also, it's the 80s. We're talking Purple Rain era. He's at the top of the world in 84 for sure.
Oh yeah.
And as we also saw from the We Are the World documentary, I think it's called like The Greatest Night in Pop History or something like that.
Yeah.
And that like, look, there's a chance that there can be a really incredible impromptu music session that he gets into. He also, as we've seen from Chappelle's show, can bust out into pancakes and basketball on a moment's notice.
I've definitely heard the stories about like basketball, roller skating.
Yes. Well, you've seen the pictures of him in the roller skates with the Batman tank up on, which, by the way, Michael Keaton is there. So, the two of them are going to have some things to talk about. If we're just talking about a giant 80s version of not a specific era, because clearly that's 89. It's
I feel like you can kind of, though, it sounds like, you're just kind of picking your entire 80s entity of this person, and you're not necessarily like, there's no small, like, even though Jeff Goldblum is going to be there, we're not going to talk about Gina Davis.
And Gina Davis was on my maybe list, but I was like, Sigourney Weaver and Gina Davis, I feel like two like powerhouses when it comes to,
and I don't think
they, at the time.
I don't think they'd blend well. Whereas,
Carrie Fisher and Sigourney Weaver, I could see a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
Although
Absolutely.
Gina Davis would be really interesting. I'd love to talk about Transylvania 65000, but
I don't know that she would, but no, she was, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I can't have Davis and Goldblum. I'm not going to invite that type of drama.
Well, if you're doing power couples and it's like at the beginning of that time together, because they were together for quite a bit.
1989 power couples, 1988, like around that time, you
still get your Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell, So anyway, that's my group. I mean, I feel like I could hang out with Michael Keaton and any other four people in the world and be happy.
Oh, you know what I thought about with Michael Keaton, though, was I'm like, I don't think I follow sports enough to. I was like, I feel like I would disappoint Michael Keaton in conversation.
I feel, not having ever met Michael Keaton, and I hope that that's not something that I can say forever, I feel like Michael Keaton would be very forgiving of any, separation of interests between the two of you. So like perhaps there's a moment where something sports related comes up and you say like, I don't really know too much about that. Could you tell me some more about that? I bet he would be so good at explaining things and would enjoy it.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, you're right about that. I mean, I'm sticking like, I'm gonna commit to my my Mount Chillmore as you put it here. But like, there's definitely a lot of. I'm like, it's almost like if I could curate a series of dinner parties, you could put together the right crowd for each one.
Right. And this isn't just a dinner party. This is a weekend away together.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. It's a weekend. It's a weekend away together.
It's a big chill weekend.
Okay. Yes. I'm on the dinner party. I feel like that's the classic version of the question is the dinner party. So
this is dinner party plus.
No. Yeah, heavy things are going to come up. Heavy topics are going to come up. Yeah. No.
So Dan,
it's best we don't have Martin Short.
Right. Yeah. Although, man, it'd be great to have a drop by
as Jiminy Glick.
Oh my God. I couldn't handle that. Dan, what's your background with The Big Chill?
Background with The Big Chill. I think I probably knew of the soundtrack, knew more about the soundtrack than the movie. To begin with, the soundtrack was maybe not like an introduction to that style. Like we grew up in a house, our parents are boomers, our parents are the target demographic for this movie.
Yeah.
And they, our mother's big into Motown and played a lot of Motown. We heard a lot of that type of music growing up. And I don't remember them ever owning the Big Chill soundtrack, but I remember like the Big Chill soundtrack being a thing. And like I heard it through the grapevine when that kind of became repopularized by the California Raisins in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
You have it like, oh, right. That was the song from the Big Chill, even though it predates the Big Chill, but it's the song that opens the Big Chill and introduces you to the characters. And it really, I heard it through the
opening sequence. It's like a Goonies level opening sequence.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very, very similar. Gives you that much information about the characters in that much time. So I must have first seen it on, I'm guessing VHS.
Okay.
I'm guessing I rented it at some point, having heard about it and getting into film and feeling, when I was in high school and I started to feel like, okay, there are certain movies that I should see.
Yeah.
And not that this was one that I don't remember our parents ever really talking about it. And I don't remember if they ever mentioned seeing it or
no.
whether.
You know what? I should ask our mom if she remembers seeing The Big Chill. I mean, it's been such a long time.
Yeah, but she would. Yeah, you would remember because I would say it's a movie that really taps into a lot, particularly for that generation.
Yeah,
but
I mean, also this came out in September of '83. I was a baby, our brother Scott was like a toddler. She wasn't going out to the movies.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So, but yeah, so I mean, I must have seen it on VHS, which honestly, like this is a movie that, I mean, thank goodness that now widescreen is so ubiquitous and that we really pretty much only watch things in their intended widescreen format. But Big Chill, not necessarily a movie that I think relies on that for to work or to function. And I don't think it's kind of it was the perfect 1983 movie as VCRs and video rentals started to pop up. It was the type of movie that it was like, made to sit in front of with a bowl of popcorn.
Yeah.
So I've seen it, I would say a few times over the years, probably not more than 4. I'd say like I definitely seen it more than once before watching it this most recent time, but the most recent time might've been like 3 or 4, but it doesn't like, there are things with The Big Chill that from first viewing are implanted in my mind. There's, and I not just me, but like sometimes, especially in describing a very specific like mood, it's like the image of that Glenn Close in the shower in tears, just like sitting on the floor of the shower, bawling her eyes out. And it's like, that is something that I feel like over the years, I've, whether something has happened, it's like, this is how I feel right now. Or like this image. And it's like telling someone like, okay, if you've seen The Big Chill, you know what I'm talking about. And that describes the emotion. It's such an iconic, it is such a moment, and it's something that this movie is great at, both inside the opening credits and beyond the opening credits, is using the camera to give us all of this information about these characters, and they speak volumes. So I would say, especially on this viewing of The Big Chill, which is probably the first time I'm watching it since getting married and having kids. So it hits different.
Yeah.
What's your Big Chill history?
I think that the first time that I saw it was really only just a few years ago. And it was one of those moments where it was like, oh, this is one of those like cinematic blind spots for me, where I just somehow it hasn't happened. And it was maybe streaming somewhere and I was like, oh, I should watch that. And I watched it and I didn't remember anything about, what it was supposed to be. And I just kind of knew who was in it. And it's just like, oh, well, I love Kevin Kline. I love Jeff Goldblum. I mean, the cast is so incredible. And so it was like, all right, I may as well give this one a go. And I really loved it. I mean, it's maybe in the top 10, 15 movies for me.
Okay.
Because it's just that good. I mean, it's so well written and directed, and the performers are just at the top of their game. And so many of them have either this is their first movie or one of their first movies. Like, these are these colossal people who just like are about to hit. And you're catching them in these performances where they, don't have the ego behind them, where that could be impacting their performances, and they're really putting so much into it. And then the more I learned about the movie and its production, it makes so much sense why they work so well together. They did 4 weeks of rehearsals. They lived in these condos like 45 minutes away from the house. Kevin Kline and Jeff Goldblum rented a house together that they nicknamed the G Spot. And everybody would just go there and hang out and party. And they rented a piano. And, Jeff Goldblum put him in front of a piano. You've got yourself a good time. And Glenn Close, like, Mary Kay Place basically like took Glenn Close and was just like, come on over. We're going over to Jeff and Kevin's place and we're going to dance. And she's like, oh, I don't like to dance. And she's like, you're coming. And like had the best time. And they all just lived these lives together as this little unit for such a long time. And, Lawrence Kasdan, really steered this ship. Coming off of successes, wrote like Empire Strikes Back and,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And, it's just like this guy can, it's like, this is your chance to do your thing and to do something really authentic, and just really ran with it. And watching it that first time, you feel all of the things that you're supposed to feel. And also because I was probably in my 30s when I watched it, and these characters are all in kind of like their mid-ish 30s. You connect with it so greatly. And then, watching it in preparation for this podcast, there was just so much more that I got to kind of dive into with them, and, living in that moment with them is just really great. And shout out to the Criterion Collection. I watched the Criterion like bonus features, and there's these great interviews and making of featurettes and things like that, where it's like, they did one maybe in like 2003 and they did another one like 2013 and stuff. So it's like seeing them looking back at it, 30 years later versus like 15 years later or whatever, they still speak about the movie as if it just happened, and they can remember all of the details about the production. This is the actors, the producers, Lawrence Kasdan's co-writer, but also his wife Meg, who kind of designed the soundtrack, who's like so much to thank for the feeling of this movie as well.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like it's just that good of a movie.
It is. And to comment again on the soundtrack, what I love about this soundtrack is something that it's not necessarily a device that belongs in every movie, but it works for this movie, where even though these songs were not written for the movie, they very much feel very appropriate, and they help fill in blanks of, I heard it through the grapevine playing as each character is learning of the suicide of their friend.
And we'll get into a whole synopsis soon. But I heard it through the grapevine is a perfect way. I mean, it's very literal, which I know they tried to avoid doing, but
You have that, like, you know, that song that, like, I know something about love, and like, tell him that I'm never going to leave him. As you have all of this, that you have some of this sexual tension, both between the couple, like the people who never got together, but have always had those urges, and the people who have had like a rupture. And I know you're going to summarize.
We'll
so I'm
do
being
a whole
vague,
thing. Yeah.
But like, and in this movie, it feels so appropriate because, and they establish very early on that Harold, Kevin Kline's character, is very devoted to the music of that time.
Well, something that is cool about it, and I think that it's Jeff Goldblum's character even says, like, don't you have anything from this century?
Yes.
And it's what's nice about it is it's kind of like, this was the music that they would have been listening to when they were in college together. So there is a little bit of that era that has really never left Harold, Kevin Kline's character.
Well,
and he just wants to live in that time, even though he has, you know, aged out of it. He's, you know, there's still part of it that stays with him.
Right. I mean, in terms of music from like what music did you listen to in college that you still listen to today?
Oh, that I still listen to today. I mean, I kind of I dip back into that stuff all the time, but I don't know, like Weezer and the Get Up Kids. And so, you know, I was early 2000s is when I was in college.
But like, there's some stuff, like for me, like I'll still go back to, of course, like the Radiohead, the Benz, OK Computer, which came out when I was in college. And I'll go back to, you know, REM, whose career, you know, long before I went to college and some after, but the stuff that they put out in like high school, college is what I still go back to of theirs. But, you know, there's other things that I listened to in college that when I go to listen to them now, they just like, they don't hit the same. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. I used to love this in college, but now like I get bored of it pretty quickly. So it's interesting what, you know, kind of what sticks. And it's also interesting, I would say, like from the era that you're from, what sticks. And
I recently went back, and it's been a long time since I've listened to this kind of stuff, but I recently went back and listened to some like Dave Matthews Band and like Blues Traveler.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this stuff is pretty silly sounding. It's fascinating. I mean, there's that kind of music that I feel like was necessary because it kind of bridged us into, you know, greater music.
We needed something a little after Kurt Cobain. We needed like, this is my whole theory about Weezer, is that like, it was like, we needed pure rock music. We needed this rock music that didn't have the kind of like the grit and the dirt and the like the track marks of grunge. So it felt like Weezer, and then I think about Weezer because they're a David Geffen,
right?
You know, on the same label as Nirvana, but like the Dave Matthews, like we just like, you know, oh nice, there's a flute, like, and Under the Table and Dreaming is an album that I still like and that I still go back and listen to every now and again. But whereas I used to be able to listen to a lot of Dave Matthews, now it's, you know, not so much.
Yeah. Actually just like last week, I listened to the first few Weezer albums, and I mean, I'm one of the Weezer fans who, you know, the Blue Album and Pinkerton hold up, they're exquisite. The songwriting, the lyricism, all of it is just grade A, and just totally holds up. And then it starts to get into kind of silly territory, where it's like Island in the Sun and Beverly Hills and stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to really like the Green Album, like when it came out. I listened to that one on repeat a lot. But yeah,
so here's something funny. I had the Green Album on in the car the other day, and you know, my daughter, she's about to turn 7. She's at the point where she's starting to like see words out in the wild and read them. And so what she loves to do is when a song comes on and she sees on the screen what song it is, either she'll ask me what it is, or if she can read it, she'll just read it. And she is just like, this song is called Dope Nose. Or no, this song is called Hash Pipe.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, Dope Nose I think is a different one. But this song is called Hash Pipe.
Yeah. Like,
and
is Dope Nose on Pinkerton?
No. I think I'm looking it up. Dope Nose, Weezer. Because is that Green Album? That was Green Album.
It was Green Album.
Yeah.
I remember Hash Pipe, Islands in the Sun.
Oh, sorry, it's Maladroit. It's Maladroit.
Oh, Maladroit. Okay.
Yeah, the fourth album.
Geez, I forgot about that one. Oh, yeah, I used to like that one.
Yeah. But she was like, this song is called Hash Pipe. And I'm like, yes, no further questions.
Yep. That it is.
So, all right, let's get back into the Big Chill. Shall we synopsize?
It's about time.
After the death of a 30-something named Alex, a group of his college friends have an impromptu reunion at his funeral in South Carolina. They congregate at the home of Harold and Sarah, a couple who met in college and ended up getting married. However, Sarah is particularly impacted by Alex's death due to a romantic relationship they had in the past, but that doesn't mean that she is any less in love with the group's father figure, Harold, the owner of a successful running shoe store. They are also joined by Meg, an Atlanta lawyer who is feeling the maternal pressure as a childless single woman in her 30s. Nick is the proto-Frasier of the group, a talk radio psychologist who struggles with a drug addiction and likely PTSD from his time in the Vietnam War. Michael is a journalist for People magazine and is casually trying to turn his old college pals into new restaurant investors. Another writer in the group is Karen, though her role has mostly turned into mother and wife of a boring ad exec. But Karen begins to feel alive again after initiating a brief affair with their friend Sam, who is the star of popular TV show JT Lancer. They are also joined by Chloe, Alex's girlfriend, who is a stranger to the group, though they all get a better understanding of Alex through Chloe, who was the one to find his body after he, as the kids say, unalived himself. As the group grieves together and wonder how they could have been there for Alex, they also use this weekend together to express their frustrations transitioning from kids to real adults with real responsibilities.
That just about sums it up.
Yeah. So Meg is played by Mary Kay Place, who's so damn good. We sang her praises on the Pecker episode.
We love her.
We love Mary Kay Place. Michael is
we'd give her a baby.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. Sam is Tom Berenger. Harold is Kevin Kline. Sarah is Glenn Close. Nick is William Hurt. Karen is Jo Beth Williams. And Chloe is Meg Tilly. And it's just, it's a great cast. No complaints.
Famously, Alex, who is unseen in the final cut of the movie, was played by Kevin Costner.
Yeah, who allegedly his like one other acting credit before this was another movie that he got cut out of. So at least that's when we see like parts of his body. Yeah, as he's being prepared for his funeral.
You know, and honestly, when I think about Kevin Costner in that ensemble, it feels like 1983 Kevin Costner is a bit too maybe young or young looking to fit into that group. Like I think of, so Kevin Costner, I don't know if he did another movie between this and Silverado, but with Lawrence Kasdan's follow up to this was Silverado.
Yeah.
And Kevin Costner's in that, and he kind of plays like the brash young, kind of like a Billy the Kid type character in that. And I just think about early 80s Kevin Costner, and even just in terms of appearance, like not even in terms of like acting, having like seeing him would have, and in other ways as well. Because I think this movie is very well served by the fact that you don't see Alex and you just hear about Alex, but Alex is always present.
Yes.
So not to never actually see him, not just because it's Kevin Costner and he would, I imagine, like, you know, be like not a good fit. Like the other actors are such good fits.
You know, they did film a a moment that was a flashback that was supposed to go at the end of the movie where all of them are together in college and Alex is there with them. And Lawrence Kasdan cut it out after like a test screening, and he just decided it just doesn't feel right to do this, and it was the right move.
So at least you would have seen the younger so he would have been, he's
right.
supposed to be younger. Okay. That makes sense. But yeah, no, definitely the right move to take that scene.
Although I feel like also like Jeff Goldblum, he feels so young in this movie. You know, he's like really wiry, and I don't know, like even when we see him a couple years later in other movies after he kind of like broke out, you know, he just seems a lot more mature, whereas here he does feel a little bit more juvenile. And that's kind of to go with his character. He's not as emotionally mature as some of the others are, but that's also, you know, he's unmarried. We do see at the beginning that he has a girlfriend, and we hear that he has a girlfriend, but he's still, you know, he goes there with condoms. Like he's thinking, you know,
is it his girlfriend, or is that because that was something I wasn't clear on if that was his girlfriend or his like secretary. I couldn't tell.
Oh no, they I think that there's a line in there saying that like, oh yeah, you know, he has a girlfriend. Like I think that it's like Harold or somebody who says that. It's a brief thing, but I think that it's established at one point.
But and then there's also the idea that like when they get together with each other, the idea that like you kind of go back to, it's like when you're just with that group of people who the last time you were really that insular with them, you were at that age, you might go back to that role. So I very much see Michael being the one who, like the guy in the group who had trouble with girls.
So another bit that was cut out of the movie is this whole sequence that happens as people are arriving at the funeral. And when Michael arrives, you know, first he sees Harold and he's like pulling his car up, and he has to remind everybody it's Michael. He's reminding everybody who he is. The only person that remembers who he is Sam, but like no one else really remembers who he is. And also what doesn't end up in the movie is how this weekend of them staying together comes about, because it's an impromptu weekend together. Whereas in the final cut of the movie, it more comes across as like a planned thing. Like, oh, don't worry, you can stay with us. But like you see them kind of saying like, oh, you know, like Meg is like, oh, I have to get back to, I forget where she's practicing. Atlanta. Philly. I have to get back to Atlanta.
Atlanta.
I think it's Atlanta. It's like, I thought so. Huh. I don't know. But she's like, I have to get back. I've got too much work to do. And they're just like convincing her to stay. And then, you know, they're kind of like, you know, getting everybody settled in different rooms in the house. Because it is impromptu, it's not prepared. So, but that's cut out, and I feel like it serves it better because it's not important that it kind of happens accidentally. And it's also not important for them to maybe be a little fuzzy on who Michael is, because when we're getting into it, like he's part of it, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. I didn't really catch that they didn't remember Michael. And of course, Sam has good reason to remember Michael.
Sure.
As they have I guess People magazine did a feature on his divorce. And did Michael write it?
Michael wrote it.
Michael wrote it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Sam was a little salty about it, or very salty about it. But it's like, and Michael is like, I put you on the map kind of a thing.
But it's like something that I think I appreciate the fact that it's like he's not a bad guy. Like he's not unlikable, Michael. He's just very insecure. And totally. I think from having been kind of the insecure one, like I think about my kind of group of college friends, and I was the insecure one out of the group. I was the one who, you know, didn't have a girlfriend, you know, for a lot of the time. So it was kind of like that, you know, I connected with that idea of Michael being like, especially when when it comes out that Meg is looking for a partner to father a child.
Right.
And he's like, he's out there, he's playing football. He does something athletically well and can't help taking that and linking it to the other thing and saying like, oh, are you now? Maybe.
Well, Michael and Meg had been together one time when they were in college.
Yeah.
And so he's like, should we let history repeat itself? Stuff like that. So let's talk about the Meg thing for a minute. So she does not have children. She does not have a romantic partner, but the biological clock is ticking. Insert Marissa Tomei gif stomping on the ground. And she'd be a good one to invite over for a big chill weekend.
When we do 90s.
90s actors. That's true. But still, a weekend should be a fun person to have over.
Absolutely. Love Marissa Tomei.
So for Meg, she's thinking like, I kind of want to do something about this. And she confides to Sarah about this. Glenn Close and Kevin Kline are kind of like the mom and dad of the friend group.
Yeah.
And Meg is the one who's trying to like, she put her career first and now she's kind of like, having some regrets and everything. And so she's trying to think like, Nick, would he be a good mate? I don't know. He's got the substance use problem and he's, a little unpredictable. And Sam becomes kind of the viable option there. But Sam is not interested in.
She goes to Nick first.
She does go to Nick first.
She does go to Nick first, and that's the first time that we get any indication of his impotence.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's impotent.
And actually, this brings up an interesting question. Something else that I was a little unclear on because I in just reading a few articles and essays about the movie, most of them from either last year when it was hit 40.
Yeah.
Anyway, and one of them suggested that his impotence was psychological. And that's
what I assumed.
Okay.
That it was like a Vietnam War PTSD connected thing.
My assumption was that it was due to an injury sustained in the war. And I will tell you why, because I can point to a very specific reason that just makes me think like that's what we were being led to think, is because when he goes to tell her, they're sitting in the attic and he goes to tell her, he's like, so when I was in Vietnam, and then cut to downstairs and we see her scream, or we hear her scream. And in my mind, that was her, it was a tease to think that was her response to him describing what happened, and that it was that it turns out to be a bat.
Right. I feel like I got something different from his Vietnam experience, less about him being injured, because I feel like they would have known about that, but maybe more about something that he did that's perhaps unforgivable. That maybe has scarred him emotionally.
Oh,
that's kind of where my mind went.
It does. That makes a lot more. It does make a lot more sense. But it's funny because I think I've always, that's from the very beginning, that was kind of what I thought about it. And I think I've just kind of held on to that from the first time I saw this movie, like maybe in high school, held on to like, oh yeah, that's the moment that, because maybe when I first heard the scream, I was like, oh, that's her reacting to what she just heard.
And that also just goes to show you how we experience, and we talked about this on our last episode, but how we experience movies during different times in our lives.
Yes.
And so perhaps, when you're a teenager and you're watching this movie, your mind goes to something that's physical, but when you're older, your mind goes to something that's emotional. And,
or just knowing more, and also like logically thinking about, like you said, if he had been seriously wounded, they probably would have known that. And he also shows no signs of having been seriously physically wounded. I mean, we can't tell what he, we don't see him without clothes on. But anyway,
No, for that you have to watch Body Heat.
Oh, yes. Have you seen Body Heat?
It's been a while, but after watching this, because that's Lawrence Kasdan, it's William Hurt and Kathleen Turner.
Yeah, Kathleen Turner.
Yeah.
Yep. Who's another one of like the Lawrence Kasdan players, because she comes back and works with him in An Accidental Tourist. With
William Hurt as well.
Right. Yeah.
But I'd say that the ultimate of the Lawrence Kasdan players is Kevin Kline.
Kevin Kline or Kevin Costner?
Oh, yeah, that's true. I wonder who does have more credits together. Costner or Kline.
So Costner and Kline. All right. So if we count Big Chill for both of them, you got Big Chill for both of them. Silverado for both of them. Wyatt Earp, Kevin Costner. So that's 3 for Costner, 2 for Kline.
I'm just gonna make it. I'm just gonna make it easy, and I'm just gonna look up the Lawrence Kasdan filmography.
You're looking it up. Folks who are not seeing this on video, I'm just holding up fingers as I'm counting. And
okay, so think. Big Chill, both of them. Silverado, as you mentioned, Costner. Accidental Tourist is neither of them, if I'm not mistaken. I Love You to Death, which is Kline.
Oh,
right. Is Costner in that one?
No Costner and I Love You to Death.
William Hurt is also in that one. So William Hurt should also be in contention for the biggest collaborator.
And is William Hurt in Grand Canyon?
Grand Canyon, I don't think so, but Kline is in that one, right?
Is Kline in Grand Canyon? I know Steve Martin.
Danny Glover, Kevin Kline.
Okay,
Steve Martin.
Kline's in Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's just Kline in Grand Canyon. Bodyguard is Costner, famously.
But Kasdan didn't
Wyatt
direct
Earp
that.
is. Oh no, that's right. He wrote it.
Yeah.
Wyatt Earp, famously Costner. French Kiss, Kline. Mumford.
Jason. Oh no, that's not Jason Lee.
Jason Lee is in. Mumford.
Jason Lee is in that. Yeah, Mumford.
Do we have?
No,
I don't know that Zooey Deschanel was in that one.
Yeah. Mumford.
No,
I remember.
We don't have either of those.
I didn't think Lawrence Kasdan directed Mumford. I thought someone else did.
He did.
Oh, wow.
Directed, wrote it, and produced it. Dreamcatcher.
I remember liking Mumford. Oh, wait. Is William Hurt in Dreamcatcher?
No. Timothy Oliphant is in Dreamcatcher.
Timothy Oliphant,
Jason
like
Lee again.
Jane.
What's that? Thomas Jane?
Thomas Jane.
Yeah. Darling Companion, which is Kevin Kline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's and Richard Jenkins, who we talked about a bunch of times. Mark Duplass, Diane Keaton, Elizabeth Moss, Diane Wiest, our girl Diane Wiest.
Diane Wiest, talk about the 80s.
She'd
Diane Wiest. Oh.
Wiest would be a really good one.
Good loves. Yeah. I might need to uninvite somebody.
But also you still have the danger of her inviting Woody Allen over.
Oh, we can't get out of it. Oh. Well, at least there wouldn't be any kids there. All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Lee Phoenix is another person that could, fit into the. Anyway, moving on. So I don't know. Right. Where was our count? It could be an even split between Costner and Kline. When it comes to
I think Hurt is out of the running.
Hurt comes close.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, let's get back to the big. It's so getting back to the Big Chill.
Yeah.
So we've got Meg is on her. So she's trying to get pregnant.
She's on her journey. Yeah.
It's interesting that I feel like now that is a topic that people are more open discussing, and it's been less stigmatized. So I was a little surprised. And this is another thing, like watching it at this point in my life that I noticed was like, for 1983, like they are being kind of remarkably open. Of course, it's not that she's having trouble biological trouble conceiving.
No, she doesn't have a partner.
No, right.
Yeah.
So, but even even a few years later, when we have Look Who's Talking and they're talking about artificial insemination, that doesn't necessarily come up here. But everyone seems pretty open once the cat's out of the bag.
These are people that she knows and she has a lot of affection for and she has a history with.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad idea. Let's because we're already like an hour into this. So let's talk about we talked about Michael a little bit. So, he's there with kind of this ulterior motive to kind of get these investors in his business. And as we know, Harold is doing quite well. Sam is doing really well.
Harold is also, sorry to interject there, but so you mentioned like Michael is casually, and I feel like casually should be in quotes, trying to get people to invest in his club. Yeah. Harold is also quote unquote casually like engaging in insider trading.
He's trying to help Nick out in a very friendly way. He's
not just Nick.
Yeah. Does he also tell other people? I can't remember. I remember him telling Nick when they're out running.
I think he tells Sam about it.
That would be weird for him to tell Sam. I don't remember that.
Well, because Sam would have the money or I don't know. I don't know. Well,
but what he tells Nick is that like, just so you know, the stock prices are about to triple or whatever it is. So,
but he definitely mentions it to somebody else. Cause I know Sarah gives him is like, why do you keep telling people about it?
I don't really remember that, but yeah.
I honestly didn't, I did most of my note taking after the fact. I kind of just wanted to watch the movie. So a lot of my notes are, after watching it more reflective. So I don't have much. I have a few things that I took note on like in the movie. And I think they're things I will come back to.
Yeah. Well, let's just kind of go down to each of the characters and just give a little bit more information about them. So Harold, he's got this very successful, is it a store? Because he gives all of his friends shoes, but they're like Nikes. So it's not like he's manufacturing the shoes. So I thought that it was maybe more of like a shoe store chain, like a running shoe store chain.
I think it's because he talks about different store locations, and he at one point he talks about
right. So he's doing really well. I mean, he and Sarah, they own that gigantic house in South Carolina. What is it, like Beaumont, South Carolina?
Beaumont. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is where Beaufort, South Carolina. Which is where Tom Berenger lives now, or he at least lived 10 years ago or something. But
it's also the same house where The Great Santini was filmed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting. Another film that we had been considering for this episode would have been shot
we did.
At the same house.
I know we could have done both of them, but certainly we have plenty to talk about on this one.
Oh yeah.
Sarah, we talked about a little bit. I mean, she has a really difficult time navigating the emotions of having fun with her friends while also mourning Alex, who she, had this past relationship with. And in a lot of the supplemental footage that they show on the Criterion DVD and interviews and stuff, it's really talking about how Alex was really like the love of her life, but it doesn't mean that she loves Harold any less, but it's just like she had this real strong connection with Alex. But it's somebody who also was on his own path and wasn't ready to grow up and wasn't on the same path that Sarah and Harold were on.
Right. And by the way, Alex was the other person who Harold told about the purchase of his company.
Got it. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
People who need help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we talked about Nick a little bit. So Karen, Jo Beth Williams.
Yeah.
We see her husband Richard for a bit. He's there for a little while and then just leaves. And his little scene where he's just buttering toast or whatever, and he's just that's such a good scene, and he's fantastic.
So you can just feel it. It's such an awkward. There's so much awkwardness.
Well, it's interesting to see how he experiences their friend group versus somebody like Chloe, who, yeah, she knew Harold and Sarah because they all lived nearby, but like not very closely. And she's just meeting everybody else for the first time, but she can hang. And even though she's like significantly younger than they are, she's the connection to Alex. She is kind of like their way to kind of get into his psyche a little bit.
And she doesn't hold back. She's very
fantastic.
She's very much herself. She's very much her own person. And she does a lot of listening. That's one of the things I love about Meg Tilly's performance is you see her observing a lot. And there's that one, and sometimes it's more subtle. Sometimes it's really out front. Like, especially there's one wonderful shot where she's sitting on the steps and she's overhearing Nick interviewing himself. He's set up the VHS camera and is
what a cool device.
So good. So good. I mean, talk about quintessential, like 1983.
Yeah.
Perfect. And of course, the fact that Harold has all of these like fun
totally makes sense
tech tools. Yeah. So that you see her, she's listening and she's learning about these people. And who knows what she knows about them from Alex, but it seems so different than the way, Richard, right? That's Karen's husband. And Richard says to her, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about with these people. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, what's so cool though is like when they start to ask Chloe, they get Chloe on camera to talk. She's like, I don't talk about myself as much as you guys do. I don't think about like, my emotions the way that you all do, essentially. And it's such a great line.
And it's a comment on that. It's that generational difference.
Totally.
And, I mean, so Chloe would be, I didn't think to look up like how old she's supposed to be in this. Meg Tilly would have been 23 when this came out. So, and I put Chloe, early 20s.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, so she's born in the early 1960s. Does that make her a boomer?
Yeah, it's I think a little cuspy, but it still puts her, but it's like, giving the generations their names is one thing, but
but I'm saying
there's a big difference between an older boomer and a younger boomer.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying is like, we're getting a generational difference here, but it's kind of like from both ends of the generation, because if they are, let's say they are 35, so they're all born like 47, 48, around that, like our parents, So, it's a totally different perspective, and it's like, it makes me wonder, like, okay, when Chloe goes back and watches The Big Chill 15 years later, the character in the film, that is. So,
right, of course. This is a documentary.
Not my daughter, who is named Chloe.
Right.
Correct. But yeah, she's a fascinating character, and she's a wonderful, like, I like that you kind of put her as the counter to Richard, whereas Richard is older than them. He is obviously a few years older.
Right.
And like honestly, if we think about like how you define the baby boomer generation, Richard might be a little too old to be classified as a baby boomer. So it's like, that might be very intentional to put him right outside of that range and put Chloe down on the bottom end of it, bordering on a Gen X. But I think this movie is very much about generations though. And cause it's about the music, like the music of a generation.
Right. But also it's like anybody can watch this movie and translate it to their own experiences, no matter what your age is.
Well, no, that's also what I'm saying is that you can, and that you can take this movie. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, it's not something worth necessarily like remaking, because it's been kind of remade as each, because different generations do their own versions of The Big Chill.
Well, what would you consider to be different generations' version of The Big Chill?
Well, I mean, kind of like there's, well, I guess the show 30 something was also about boomers, but
30 something, I mean, is kind of the television version of The Big Chill.
Yeah. I'm thinking about now, and all I'm thinking about are like not as similar to it. So
yeah. Well, let's use this as an opportunity to kind of talk about what we would do. So Dan, like, what did you have in mind for a way to revisit The Big Chill?
I was thinking about it a lot, and just thinking about
the character of Chloe watching the movie The Big Chill.
Yes, it's just like, this is strange. Yeah. So, and just,
I'd love to see Meg Tilly acting. So there you go.
And just to kind of touch upon how this movie ends, I think it's so realistic and believable and I love the line where they wake up in the morning after, where Karen and Sam have finally slept together, and Karen is, as they're all getting ready to go, and Karen's like, so if Richard and I bring the kids to LA, like, can you get us into one of the studios? Like, okay, now I can go back to my life. I'm going to go back to my, like, mediocre marriage.
Yeah. And by the way, for anybody who hasn't seen it,
spoiler alert.
Yes, Meg ends up theoretically maybe, having a child with Harold, because and I'm already blanking on her name. Sarah. Sarah kind of gets the idea to lend her husband as kind of the stud for Meg, after she hears her talking on the phone to Sarah and Harold's children, and kind of like had this thought and was just like, you know what? Have it.
Well, and it also, I think, at least for her, gets her off the hook for her affair.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's maybe like 80-20, 80, like she just wants to have that closeness and she feels like it'd be something really appropriate to do. And then there's the 20 that maybe kind of gets her off the hook a little bit.
I might go a little bit like 75-25.
Interesting. Okay.
Or 70-30. But but
we'll have our team crunch the numbers.
You do see the look on her face when Meg is on the phone with the kids, and you do see her kind of have that. And I think it's not, I think the seed
I see it differently.
Well, hold on a second. I know, I'm saying, like, you see in her eyes, like, the goodness, like the good intention.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's what you see. But the fact that, like, the idea is planted earlier when Meg talks about it the first time and talks about, like, well, you're married to, like, the perfect man.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that, at least for the audience, is planting the seed as you see. Wow. Okay. Pun unavoidable. But, that as all of the other possibilities are being checked off the list, right, and you're like, okay, so it's going to be Harold. And then that also kind of ties up the loose end of the affair with Alex, which we know there's still, like, Harold and Sarah might act like they're past it, but we also know that they're not.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of, but yeah, no. What I'm saying is, like, I see when she makes that decision, you see the joy in her face, and it's Glenn Close being wonderful as always.
Yeah.
How she, like, it feels like even when she goes to, like, talk to Meg and to tell, like, you don't need to hear any dialogue between them. You know exactly.
Right.
What the conversation's going to be, and right. And she is genuinely, like, this is a genuine, like, good act that she is doing, because it is a way that she can help her friend who deserves all the good things, who sacrificed so that she could be a public defender, and so that she could, do like that, like, maybe more than any of them really lived out the ideals of the 1960s in a way that translates to the 80s, because, like, we know Harold has gone corporate. And, you know, Sarah's a doctor, which,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not like that is very like, you know, that is also doing a, you know, a giving thing. That is also a, I would say, you know, kind of charitable. When you're a doctor, you are serving, you know, people, you are serving the world. So she's, but being the public defender, and it's also like the fact that she goes from public defender to private practice, like that's kind of the sign of like, it's exhausting to keep up with the 60s ideals.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, I think that Sarah's move is, very charitable, but I mean, I think that there's a solid 25% of her that says, this is how I can like level the universe again. This is how I can
we can
bring
move
balance
past
back to the force.
Yeah. Sure. So,
all right. So
yeah, getting to it.
Yeah. So anyway, part of that is, and part of the wonderful acting and the expressions that you see is part of the reason why I wouldn't adapt this to a stage play, even though it's very adaptable.
Sure.
What would be the purpose? To me, it seems like I think about The Graduate on Broadway, which the purpose of that was what? To see the movie but not watch the movie.
Speaking of Kathleen Turner. To
see Kathleen Turner in the nude. To see Jason Biggs and Alicia Silverstone. No.
Oh yeah, I forgot that she was in that.
Yeah. Oh God, she was terrible. So I felt like, because my first inclination was, all right, well, a lot of dialogue, good ensemble, so make for a great play. And then, of course, there's that, like, the evil, like, little Broadway producer, you know, Nathan Lane in Only Murders in the Building,
right.
you know, saying, like, but we could take that great soundtrack and make it a jukebox musical. And then that just... like that just waters. It's like, you're not ruining my childhood, but you're just taking this wonderful thing that, and just watering it down and taking away everything that made it wonderful. Is that these songs are in the background. These songs, but they're always in the background. They're not, we don't stop and do a musical number. Like, you know, and it works in the First Wives Club when they do You Don't Own Me, but,
but it's just the one song, you know?
Yeah, no. So I was thinking about that and thinking about, you know, you got to avoid the temptation of a play. I thought about different. What's that? Temptations. You know, just be the same old song. Or was that the Four Tops? Anyway.
Just keep going.
Yeah, I'm going to keep going. So, I was thinking, and then I thought about, like, you know, I'm like, what would it be for each generation? Like, what would a really interesting generation be, like, do this with? I was like, for mine, I graduated college in 1999. So 15 years later would be 2014. But it doesn't have the same, like, the difference in ideals from the late 60s to the early 80s are so stark in contrast because of so much change that's happened. You know, you go into the Nixon years through Carter, and then you're almost through Reagan's first term with the big chill.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily know that, like, translating it, I feel like you could do a kind of like soft remake, but I'm not sure what, like, generation you would do that with that would actually make it, like, give it meaning and give it more meaning. Like, I think that the Big Chill being 60s to 80s has a greater meaning to it. And I mean, maybe we're not there yet. Like, maybe we're not at the point yet where we can have, like, a good, accurate, like, Big Chill look, like, you know, look back to 15 years earlier and know how much has changed. So honestly, where this led me was an interesting place, because an idea that I thought about is not a sequel to The Big Chill, but it is a sequel. And that would be a sequel to Reality Bites.
Okay.
To kind of take the Big Chill ideals. And the thing is, like, a sequel to Reality Bites would now be taking, like, if it were to come out this year, would be 30 years after they graduate high school. So, or after they graduate college. So like twice the gap of a Big Chill. But I think that there's enough nostalgia, because nostalgia plays a big part in marketing the Big Chill. And I think that there's enough of that like 90s Gen X nostalgia that a follow-up to Reality Bites, and it doesn't have to involve like I was thinking, I was like, well, maybe Ethan Hawke's character dies and they get back together, and then Ethan Hawke could direct the movie, and that would be really interesting. But I don't know that you necessarily need to do that. I think you can just kind of take the Big Chill as a blueprint and say, okay, now for the 4 characters in Reality Bites, what would that be? I mean, you get Garofalo, Zahn, Hawk, Ryder.
I'm not complaining. I'd love to see them.
And Reality Bites is not one of my like favorite movies. It's not even one of like my favorite, like, and I'm Gen Xer, and I think I was a little too young to get into Reality Bites at that age, but I think like doing a follow up on that. I mean, you could say the same thing for Singles, I suppose,
right?
As well. So
yeah.
Any of those, like just following up and finding a group of that group of friends that used to be so tight and that has now drifted apart, and bringing them back together and see what that. I suppose with Singles, you have more players to work with, so it's closer to the Big Chill, and you have like kind of more of the I guess tension involved there.
Right.
But, also, I don't think, Bridget Fonda's retired, and I don't think her health allows her to work. I mean,
different situation.
Yeah. Different situation. But I think I'm going to stick with, Reality Bites, a Reality Bites follow up that kind of takes its cues from the Big Chill.
Yeah. I think that it makes a lot of sense to say that Reality Bites is kind of the Gen X version of the Big Chill in a way. I mean, it's not like they're congregating because of a particular situation. They congregate because that's their lives. I mean, they know each other because that's how they know each other.
Well, they're kind of like if you made a prequel to the Big Chill about all of them when graduation happens.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of just starting off on their adult lives, really.
Right. Which I suppose you could all, but I like, that's the other thing is like, I don't think actually making a Big Chill prequel that's like, hey, let's see the gang in college and let's get to know Alex. Like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
So, what are you thinking?
So I think, contrary to what you were just saying, it could be really cool to see a kind of present day remake of the Big Chill. But the ways that the Big Chill relates to, the 60s and the music of its time and the Vietnam War and all these other things, you don't need to have like a beat for beat, parallel for the two of them. Because as we discussed, every generation, as they're kind of going from, being more, not like children, but like into like real adulthood, having families and, succeeding or not succeeding and, having struggles from bridging certain eras of their lives. I think that is something that can be explored regardless of era or those kind of cultural tent poles, the way that the Big Chill had them. And so I like the idea of doing, a present day version of that, because it's like, something that doesn't really come up in the Big Chill because it wasn't really a thing, but it's just like to be able to afford a palatial house like that, to buy a house like that is, unfathomable for real people, you know, for the majority of people. So the struggles of, you know, the current state of the middle class and things like that are their own struggle.
Well, and yeah, so it would be interesting. And in thinking about different generations, so thinking about actually, if you were to do a like one set in, if you were to keep that 15-year gap of the Big Chill, if you make that part of your like, we are going to keep the 15-year gap. If you have one set in, like 2023. You have a group of people that graduate, and let's say that they are like, you know, let's say that they're young liberal idealists, and they graduate college as Barack Obama is elected president, and, you know, progress and change and everything happens. And then you have them getting together again in 2023 after you've had the 8 years. I'm using the presidents to kind of sum up everything that has happened during their times, but both the Obama and Trump and then into the Biden era, you do have a lot because you've got a pandemic in the rearview mirror.
Right. I don't think that I would want to see something that hinges so heavily on these like specific, you know, figures in political history. And, you know, certainly a pandemic can come in, but I always feel like when I see a movie now that like references COVID, or, you know, it's almost just like, man, is somebody watching this 75 years from now, what's their experience going to be? Because like, it'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, that was a thing. Or it's like, oh, this thing that like happens all the time that we just take a pill for and it's fine a day later, you know. It becomes a bigger it's like its own character in the movie.
Yeah. I guess it's a good question of like, at what point do you have that 15-year gap that, I mean, and I guess like people, you know, I guess it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter because it's all about where they are in their lives in like their mid 30s, and that divide of like, all right, now it's time to kick it into high gear, and, you know, who am I for the rest of my life, essentially. And I came up with a little bit of a cast list that was doing a parallel with the Big Chill cast.
All right.
So not to say that it would be like this one's name is Meg and they are a lawyer, and this is Michael and he writes for this magazine and that kind of a thing. But I did kind of have like that vibe of person and who they could possibly be.
Your Goldblum, your Tilly, your Hurt.
Yes, kind of. A little bit. So, all right, here's who I have, and also this also updates it to make it a little bit more of a diverse cast, because let's face it, The Big Chill is not the most approachable movie for somebody who doesn't have the experience, a white experience. Exactly.
Probably not.
So let's just go down. I have my list in this order. So for the Meg character, I feel like Florence Pugh would be really cool. Somebody who is of that kind of vibe. And maybe they are looking to have a kid with somebody. That could be an element of it. For a Michael character, I was thinking Michael Cera. I really like where he's at in his career, and also just like the way that he is as a person out in the world, I think is just really interesting.
I buy that.
Sam, I would say John David Washington, because you could also do somebody who is kind of the star of like an action series on TV, you know, that kind of a thing.
No, that makes sense. That's Universal.
And John David Washington is fantastic. For Harold, Paul Dano. You know, he's just like unless he's playing a character like the Riddler, you know, he's the kind of person who you could see him be like, oh yeah, you've got your shit together.
He's a great actor.
You've crossed over into adulthood before the rest of us could catch up with you.
I mean, like I also feel like he's the type of actor who fits really easily into those, like, you know, can play Brian Wilson as wonderfully as he can play, you know, the character in There Will Be Blood. Yeah. So no objections to casting. Yeah, he'd be a good Harold.
Yeah. For Sarah, I was thinking Maya Erskine, who was in Pen 15 and the most recent Mr. and Mrs. Smith series. I think she's fantastic.
Yeah.
She was also in, what's it called? Like Plus One or something like that, where she's like, she and, oh my God, Jack Quaid are starring together. Anyway, you're not going to object to this one. Nick, Jesse Plemons.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Karen, I was thinking Allison Williams. And for Chloe, Stephanie Shu, who so good in Everything Everywhere All at Once. I haven't seen her, listed to be in anything like big since then, and it's a crime. She's also just a little bit younger than everybody else mentioned, so I feel like she would kind of fit in really well with that.
Says I didn't see The Fall Guy, but looks like she was in that.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen The Fall Guy either.
Yeah. But she's awesome in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's 33.
Stephanie Shu?
Yeah. That would put her about 5 years. I feel like the rest of the people.
Yeah, just a little bit younger than the others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, all of these other actors have kind of been established longer. And so for the actor themselves to kind of be like, I'm the new kid, I'm still up and coming, whereas a lot of these are more established. I mean, Maya Erskine is a little bit of an outlier there, but the other ones, I mean, Michael Cera's been doing this since he was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Florence Pugh has had so many under her belt. John David Washington, So anyway, that's kind of where I was thinking for that one. Present day, get Gerwig in there. She could knock it out of the park.
Of course.
Noah Baumbach to co-write.
Of course.
You're solid.
That would be a really good Baumbach-Gerwig collaboration. Yeah. I think about things like The Squid and the Whale, and I'm like, that's the tone.
Yeah. But you also don't want to get a Jesse Eisenberg in there because I feel like that goes a little too far. That's a little too much.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I like Jesse Eisenberg, but
yeah, totally. I'm looking forward to this new one that he directed with Kieran Culkin. It's him and Kieran Culkin.
Oh yeah. That looks like fun.
Looks really good.
I've had the pleasure of meeting Jesse Eisenberg once.
Oh, fantastic.
Of course, before any of this, but yeah.
Sure. So Dan, I know we're already at an hour and a half, but I can't resist. I've got a little bit of a game.
Oh,
I promise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a text with a list of movies, and I'm curious to know if you're going to see where we're going here.
Okay.
So on an earlier episode, we did a little something called The Big Game. Have you gotten the text yet?
I got the text.
So, Dan, as you'll see, it's a list of movies that start off with The Big. These are the same movies that we covered on the last version. And in that iteration of the game, I listed off the actors in a movie, and you had to guess which movie that begins with the words The Big is the movie. So I'm going to do a little twist on it, make it a little bit easier for you.
Okay.
You can tell me if you want the tagline for the movie, a quote from the movie, or both.
Okay. Let's see.
So we're going to start off. If you want, we can do it. You know what? Let's start off with a really easy one.
All right.
I'm going to give you the tagline. And if you would like a quote, I can give you the quote.
Okay.
In a cold world, you need your friends to keep you warm. In a cold world, you need your friends to keep you warm.
I'm going to go with The Big Chill.
That's correct. Starting it off easy. The quote from that one was, "Getting away from you people was the best thing to ever happen to me. I mean, how much sex, fun, friendship can one man take?"
Yeah. It also could have been on the poster for this.
And it might have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. So going into it, would you like a tagline, a quote, or both?
Give me a tagline.
They figured he was a lazy, time-wasting slacker, They were right.
The Big Lebowski.
And that quote is, "Hey, careful, man, there's a beverage here." Or pick any other line from the movie.
That would have been the easier one to start with than the Big Chill.
Well, I wanted to start it with the movie that we've actually been talking about.
I know. No. I'm just the Big Lebowski. Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Here, we'll just do it this way. I'm just going to give you the tagline, and then if you want the quote, I'll give you the quote.
Let's do that.
An awkward true story. An awkward true story.
An awkward true story. I am going to go with The Big Sick.
That's right.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Her job is to expose. Oh, I'm sorry. And the quote from that one is, "I didn't heckle you. I just woo-hooed you. It's supportive."
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I think I would have gotten it on that one.
Okay. Her job is to expose a cop on the take. Putting him away won't be easy. Neither will letting him go.
Oh, we going down to Nolan's for the Big Easy.
And the quote from that one is, "If I can't have you, can I have my gator?" So far you're 4 for 4. Okay, this one. Shocking, powerful, unbelievable, and it's true.
Shocking, powerful, unbelievable, and it's true.
That's right.
The Big Short.
5 for 5. Nice. Okay. Here's where things are going to get a little more challenging. Let's see.
Yeah.
The type of man she hated was the type she wanted.
The type of man she hated was the type she wanted. I am going to go with...
You can also ask for a quote if you need
I'll take
help.
a quote, please.
Okay. "You know, you're the second guy I've met today that seems to think a gat in the hand means the world by the tail."
The Big Sleep.
There you go. 6 for 6.
For the record, I was going to guess that before the quote, but the quote locked it down.
I believe you. This one's a little challenging. Everyone is searching for something. Everyone is searching for something. And for anybody who didn't listen to our episode on The Big Easy, which is when we did this before, that time I did not give Dan the pool of options beforehand. So it was extra challenging then. Yeah. But Dan did great. He did great.
Okay. Everyone is looking for something.
Everyone is searching for something. Let me know if you would like a quote.
I'll take a quote, please.
"Hey, look, everyone. Vultures."
The Big Country.
Damn it. It's the Big Year.
Oh.
The one about bird watching.
Oh, the bird watching one. Yes. Oh.
Though they were not talking about literal vultures, but rather people trying to take advantage of a situation.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
That's okay. That's okay. You're doing great. 6 for 7. This one I think will be maybe a little bit easier, despite the fact that you may not have seen this one.
All right.
The biggest kick of the year.
Oh, the Big Green.
And for that one, the quote is, I'm little, I'm low to the ground. I got power. I got moves. I'm your man.
Yeah. I would have gotten that with the quote.
So we are 7 for 8.
All right.
It's all in who you trust.
It's all in who you trust. It's all in who you trust. Okay.
It's all in who you trust.
I am going to go with The Big Bounce.
Good job. For that one, I'm talking to you like I'm talking to my kid. For that one, the quote is, "God is just an imaginary friend for grown-ups."
Oh, okay.
Not that I think that would have helped you.
No. The other one, one of the other ones I was thinking about, like that. Yeah, it probably would have pushed me in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the tagline. Film school prepared Nick for everything but Hollywood.
The Big Picture.
And that quote is, "I don't know you, I don't know your work, but I think you're a genius, and I'm never wrong about that." So you are 9 for 10. Doing great.
This is the best I've done on any of our games, even if I get everything else wrong.
All right. This one, they fought, big they fought, big they loved, big their story.
Okay, so that one is The Big Country.
And the quote for that is, if there's anything I admire more than a dedicated friend, it's a dedicated enemy. Good line.
Would not have helped me on that, but it's a great line.
It's never too late to start acting like a family.
The Big Wedding.
Yeah, I feel like now it's maybe a little bit of a, all right, which there's only a few left.
Yeah.
And that one, the quote is, I can't believe I'm being cock-blocked by my own mother.
Whoops, there it is.
There you go. Okay, here's where we start getting pretty easy because these two movies are very different from each other.
Yeah.
Every sale begins with a smile.
The Big Kahuna.
And the quote from that one is, here's to the profound religious experience that comes from doing a job well and being grossly underpaid. Dan, you are 12 for 13, and I'm just going to say it even though you already know it. Process of elimination. Nothing's more dangerous than some nice guys with a little time to kill.
Nice, the big hit.
And that one is, ladies, you're so fine. I want to pour milk over you and make you part of my complete breakfast. Ooh. So Dan, you had 13 out of 14. Congratulations. You did fantastically. Thank you for playing the big quiz part 2. There's so many fun movies that start with the big. It's hard to resist doing something like this with it.
It's a big amount of fun.
It's a big honor to play this game with you, Dan.
And it's been a big episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a big, I don't know, question of mine to know what we're going to be doing in our next episode.
Well, yeah, no. Speaking of a big country, so our next episode takes us back another 10 years to 1973 with the release of Terrence Malick's Badlands, starring Martin Sheen, Sissy Spacek, Warren Oates. And of course, written and directed by Terrence Malick, and is one of my favorite films of all time.
Which I'm only just learning about. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's kind of snuck in there, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Well, Dan, as you are on a jog with Kevin Kline where he does some insider trading with you, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.